we advancing? Oh, sorry. Just a little bit of technical difficulties. What's that? There we go. Okay. Thanks. Okay. How many of you have been to one of the procurement presentations before? How many of you are new to the university within the last year? Okay, just a handful. Okay, good. I'm going to go kind of fast because I'm going to have to bug out of here. Sorry, I have to apologize. I've got another meeting to go to, but I might go a little bit fast, but the content's going to be here. We're going to post it on the website. So some of this is a lot of reminders for you. Some of it is just emphasizing some certain things to pay attention to. Vendors, okay, this is going to be my updates here. We'll just go along with it. But vendors and CFS, the thing that's new that we're going to present towards the end of my bit today is that we're totally changing on how we're going to onboard vendors. How many of you have been sending out 204 forms? How many of you go to our procurement website, grab the vendor data packet, send it to your vendor and say, please fill this out and get it back to me? A few? Okay, maybe somebody else in your department is sending out the vendor data records. But that's going to totally change now because we're going to onboard it much slicker than what we've been doing. No more 204 forms. That's what we've been calling them. Vendor data record forms, STD 204 forms. We're going to establish the vendor, but the thing that we want you to do is establish the vendor prior to the transaction. Okay, if you're going to order something, but especially if you're going to do services, we have to make sure it's okay. We can do services and contracts with this particular vendor. International vendors, okay, even more particular. Let me share something with you. I am a non-resident alien, okay? Not a lot of people know that about me, but so being an alien, if you're having to do business with somebody from another planet or another country, you need to make sure that it's okay for us to do business with that entity. Might be an individual person, might be the particular country. Our PaymentWorks is going to screen that for us as well. So it's an additional step. Before you were sending a preliminary assessment to me, and we would vet that with the tax treaties, with Bill Musselman, and he would go through the tax treaties and say, is it okay to do business with somebody from this country? Now PaymentWorks is going to front end that data. They're going to collect the documents necessary, send it to us for review, then we can give the green light on that vendor. But please do this before we make any kind of commitment, before we start any services with those international entities, because the answer might be, no, we can't. So please pay attention to that. But again, it's going to streamline it through PaymentWorks. Commodities versus services, okay? So commodities are just typical things. It's a lot easier to just purchase and buy. We would encourage you using the Pro Card when you're getting commodities. Again, if you're getting commodities from another country, that's another question that needs to be answered. So please check with procurement if you're going to order something from another country. But in this country, commodities should not be a problem. We'll talk about IT stuff though, because that's a little bit more complicated. Services, when somebody else is doing something for us. This includes software as a service. If it's just a simple license that you're, not a license, but it's a simple software package that you're pulling in standalone there, we just need to ask the question of, is it accessible for people with disabilities? So that's an IT question. We'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. Services require a documented understanding. Please don't send a list of prices and quotes signed by those folks and say, here it is, we've got the contract. That's not a contract, okay? We need, look to our template. You'll see our templates are on the website. Certain elements are really necessary to protect the university. Indemnification is one of those critical things. Insurance provisions, we can discuss that. Sometimes we insist on it. Other times we can modify or waive insurance requirements. There's a form for that. There's always a form for that. But that's on the website as well, if we need to modify the insurance requirements. So if they push back and say, well, wait a minute, right, easiest one is our guest speakers, guest lecturers. Typically, we just fill out the form, say, this is the risk assessment here being conducted. We can waive the insurance requirements. It's not that difficult to do. Contracts, MOUs, MOAs, agreements, they're all the same thing. They're legal instruments that bind the university. So they have to be handled carefully and thoughtfully. Contract flows, okay, that's on the website as well. All of this information that's on this slide is going to be posted in the Business Ops Forum, but it's also available on our website. So if you just visit contracts or visit procurement, you're going to be able to see this content again. The contract flow, the templates, easiest thing to do is to grab the various templates. We have one for typical service agreements. We have one for IT acquisitions. We have one for, help me out, Michael. We've got this here. Okay, we've got maintenance, obviously we've got, but guest speakers. So all those are ready to go. You just have to plop in the dates and the compensation, those things. All the elements and the provisions are in there. That's the easiest way to get forward with the service agreement. Some vendor sends you a service agreement, that's going to have to be hammered out. Typically, we can't just accept those. We can review those in procurement and contracts and be able to say, yeah, all right, this one we can go with. Other times we're going to have to blend it, or other times we're going to have to pull ours out, use their stuff as an addendum or an attachment, a scope of work, but usually it's not a standalone to just sign their stuff. It's quite unusual. The templates do invoke our CSU general provisions. So by them signing this, they're agreeing to the general provisions. Sometimes we actually print them out and attach them. We try not to, but other times it's just the link that's there. That same link is on purchase orders. When you go down to the bottom of the purchase order, there's a link to the general provisions. By the vendor doesn't even sign the purchase order, but by the vendor fulfilling the requests on the purchase order, they're agreeing to abide by the CSU general provisions. It's a stretch, but we've got it there, and it is a protection. Our contracts first to be signed by the vendor, because sometimes they're going to object, or they want to reword certain things, and we'll look through this back and forth. It might be iterative, so give that plenty of time. It could be back and forth before we can get to a mutual understanding of the provisions that we're going to have and agree to. Both sides have to agree to it. That's why we send our template out, because we're already agreeing to all of the provisions that are in our document. It's the question of whether or not they agree to those provisions. They may say back, we want to reword this, or we want to tweak this, or let's talk about the insurance. Certain things have been set up in the templates so that you cannot change them. We have to sit there with them. If the vendor wants to change them, then you got to work with us in procurement and contracts to say, okay, what can we change? What are we okay to change? What are we not? In some cases, we might have to send it down to general counsel in the chancellor's office for them to review and say, are we okay with accepting these terms? As the contracts or the agreements get more and more complex, we're going to be working with different templates and developing other agreements. We have a number of agreements to do for placement of internships. We've rolled out another template that we've used for the master's physician assistance program. We have one that we're working out for nursing. So a lot of these other are placement agreements. They're also commitments on behalf of the university. So we want to make sure that we're going forward on safe grounds. Signed by fiscal authority of the CSUMB department. It's not really essential, but it's what I want to have. I want to make sure that the subject matter expert, which is your folks and the financial people in the department who have fiscal authority, are okay with the terms, the dates, the compensation. I'm not aware of which those dates are necessary and what you're expecting as far as the deliverables. I can look for the content and the provisions, but I want somebody from the department to sign off and say, yes, this is fine. For me, it's one fiscal authority signs off on it, I'm good to go. It doesn't have to be multiples. That's something that you will learn within your particular divisions. Some divisions really want to have all hands on. It goes all the way up the chain to the VP. Others, it can go up to the VP is the provost also. But some can go right to the department chair, or some have to go to the dean. So check within your division and see what the protocols are for the signature authorities. Then it has to be executed by one of the 4 university agents. We only have 4 on this campus. They have written delegated authority. President gets it automatically from the chancellor's office, but the president delegates it further down to the VP, admin and finance, that's Kevin Saunders, don't have names here, and the AVP of finance, that's Steve Mackey, and to the director of business support services, that's me. So one of the 4 of us has to sign any one of these things that have commitments on behalf of the university. We used to get fuzzy and say, oh, if it doesn't have financial considerations, why bother? But then they get more complicated, and there's all this indemnification language and hold harmless and the different persons and different parties. So we said, no, wait a minute. If it starts to get into that kind of a thing, okay, then it needs to be signed off by one of the university agents. If it's just a simple MOU that both parties agree to work together on some kind of particular project, there's no commitment of resources, then okay, that can be something that can move forward without one of the 4 university agents. Best to ask anyway. Usually it's going to be one of the 4 of us. IT systems and services. This is a level of complexity to it on 2 different fronts. Section 508 is out of Section 508 out of the Americans with Disabilities Act. You might have heard of Section 504, which talks about accommodation. 508 talks about accessibility for people with disabilities. So when we're talking about information that's transmitted through technology, information technology needs to be accessible as much as possible to people with disabilities. So there's a review process as part of that. And what's happened now, we've developed this review process. We also have to worry about sensitive data, level 1, level 2 data. So this is social security numbers. This is particular sensitive data that we need to have more protections on when we're working with these kinds of contracts. So for this reason, for these 2 reasons, any acquisition of IT services needs to go through the process. You can approach this link. You can go right to IT, go to their service line to request a service consideration, or you can go to our procurement site and look at our templates and say, oh, okay, here's under the IT template, it'll have this note, and it'll have the link to the Team Dynamics, which is their line right now for intake, for saying, requesting service tickets and saying, we need this consideration for IT acquisition. And they'll be back and forth. It involves something that we used to call a VPAT, but now it talks about accessibility conformance template. That is a criteria that we're going to be asking the vendor to complete. It reaches into the 508 regulations, and depending upon the nature of this IT service or IT, whether it's a commodity or a service, a software, how it interacts on several different formats, it's going to be testing or assessing the accessibility of this product. And if it's not accessible, then we need to look for workarounds to say, oh, okay, how do we provide an equally effective access? If it stops short of being accessible to somebody with disabilities, how can we share this information with them so that they're not disadvantaged? If it's sensitive data, there's going to be IT supplemental provisions for sensitive data. And that's just to look at, there's a whole list. We have our regular general provisions, but when it comes to sensitive data, there's several more pages worth of additional provisions that we're going to say as far as how are you protecting the data, how are people accessing it, what are you going to do in case there's a breach, what protocols do you have to make sure it's secure. Purchase orders. Okay, so now there's confusion out there sometimes about, do I need a purchase order? Can I do this with a direct pay? Can I use my Pro card? We're trying to expand the use of Pro card where possible. Best thing to do is visit our website, but for purchase orders, you can see our guidelines at the website, and here's the link to the website. But the purchase orders, the nice thing about the purchase orders, they're best for commodities. They do invoke the CSU general provisions. They serve as a contract. They're signed by one of our buyers or contract analysts or myself, depending upon the dollar amount, but they serve as a contract with the vendor who's providing whatever the purchase order is asking for. So that's a document. The other nice thing about purchase orders is they encumber your funds. So what we find is that somebody, and especially if you have multiple transactions over the course of the year, sometimes it facilitates that by starting the year, generating this purchase order, and then when the invoices come in, you just hit it with this payment stamp, goes to accounts payable, and you're signing off on it. So it's a lot faster, especially when you have multiple transactions per year. But it also encumbers your funds so that you don't have to worry about tracking, say, I need to make sure that I set aside enough money through this fiscal year to pay for these multiple transactions. So that's one of the other benefits from it. You'll see in our guidelines, it'll say, oh, you've got to use a purchase order when you have to have a service agreement. Sometimes it's really just done there to make sure you have a service agreement in place. But honestly, if you have a service agreement, it's assigned by one of the 4 university agents, it's okay to do that with a direct pay. Because we've gone through the vetting process, it's set it up, we've determined that it's okay to do with a direct pay. So sometimes you just have a one and done. It's usually cleaner to do that as a direct pay, as long as you have the service agreement in place. Purchase order, okay, Pro cards. Oh, here's the thing with Pro cards. It's like we've started actually, some campuses will say you cannot use the Pro card for services. You just can't. They do a cut clean line. It makes it easier for them. We like to be complex. We like to say, well, wait a minute. You can use pro cards if. So it's going to be an it depends thing. You have to check with us first or go to the website. We've marked on some of our campus-wide agreements where for services where the pro card can be used. It's already been vetted by us. The kicker is going to be is whether or not we would have to be doing withholding for this entity if we were doing regular service through a direct pay or purchase order. Because sometimes the entities are such that they're either outside of the state or even they're in the side of the state, they're not incorporated. We would have to do withholding. You can't do that if you're paying with a pro card. So that's why we're saying it's like if you're thinking of paying for this service, commodities, knock yourself out. But if you're paying for this service with a pro card, you want to do that, you have to check with us first so we can run that legal entity and say, would we normally need to do withholding for them? Okay, and if the answer is yes, Kathy's Action Pack Fund Jumps, you're out there. You're one of those. You're an LLC. We cannot do a pro card payment for you. So you have to go to a direct pay. Okay. Pro card agenda. Okay, moving on to pro card agenda. Getting a pro card. How many people have pro cards? Good. How many people want a pro card? Okay. I thought the same hands would be going up, but you already have a pro card, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay. So anyway, it's pretty easy to use a pro card. We've been using it, and best thing to do is, yeah, it's great for commodities. You can use it for, it's required for getting our office supplies. Wherever you get our office supplies, if you get them from Palace, or you get them from Staples or Office Depot, it's all set up now. You've got to use the pro card for that. So that keeps it nice and clean. It's a real clean and easy transaction. Sometimes it's easier. Sometimes it would be a better to do a pro card transaction instead of an international wire, if they're willing to accept that. So again, that's something to check with us when you start to do international stuff. We'll talk about transaction declines. Let's just move forward with the agenda. But conflict of interest, we'll cover this pretty quickly. But those of you who have already got a pro card, have already been through this, it's just a reminder for anybody else who wants a pro card that didn't raise their hand because they're too shy. Here's how you can get a pro card. It's an application form, okay, filled out by somebody who's going to be your approving official, somebody in your department with fiscal authority to say, okay, that's fine, I can commit those funds. Sometimes we have the fiscal authority is reaching out to the person who has a pro card and says, I want you to go out and buy this. Other times it's they are more independently, the person with the pro card is more independently active, getting the stuff that their faculty is asking for or that their staff is asking for because they need to do the office supplies. So it goes both ways, but there's a lot of responsibility on the pro card holder. Spending limits. Okay, you'll have an approving official backup. Approving official, have a backup approving official. Part of it is we've got tight deadlines we need to meet. So if your approving official is gone, you need to have somebody with backup approving official. That person just needs to also have fiscal authority. Reconciliation buddy, that's another critical helper in case you're gone at a time that the pro card stuff is due. You don't have to be worrying about or saying, I've got to modify my vacation time because I got to be here to get my pro card reconciliation stuff in. If you have a reconciliation buddy who is also access to the CFS pro card module, so you have to get that, they can do it as long as you keep your receipts handy for them to get to. They can pull it all together and do it for you in that case. Conflict of interest requirements, we'll talk about that. Spending limits, usually it's typically 1,000 or 5,000 per cycle. That can change either immediately out of the gate with the application form, or you can request a one-time increase because you've got one in the particular cycle, you've got a need for increasing just to do this one big purchase, then it can drop down. You can talk to either any one of the three of us for those temporary changes. That would be an email that you generate, send to your fiscal authority, your approving official, to say, please approve this, forward it on to any one of the three of these people. Okay, Ava Salas first, Art Evgen, Michael Phillips. That doesn't mean tertiary. That means if you send it to Michael Phillips, you'll get a 3rd degree. So you could send it to a group, or you could, but you could figure out who's, if we're gone, we'll have a bounce back. So it can easily come to me, or somebody will contact me and say, oh, Ava's out. Art, I need you to do a temporary increase. If I see the email, we'll just reroute it. Safest thing to do, send it to all three of us. Okay, don't, that's the better thing to do. So permanent changes, we would need a form, use like the application form and just say, oh, okay, approving official, we're doing a permanent increase. You found that your spending habits or patterns have grown so much that you have multiple temporaries, you might as well just go ahead and up it. We get audited from time to time on the use of our Pro Cards from the Chancellor's office, and that's fine. We've been able to withstand that. Sometimes it's a real hassle to try and explain our Pro Card behaviors, but because of and we will do this and we'll stand by them. We would rather have many people with the Pro Cards, even if they're not used all the time, than to have sharing of a Pro Card. That's prohibited, okay? Don't share a Pro Card, you don't need to. Ask us, we'll get another Pro Card out to your department so that you don't have to share Pro Cards. Transaction decline. That's one of the things that we get in an email or a phone call, usually a phone call, but because it's like, I'm right here at the store and my transactions decline. We have merchant category codes. Uh-oh. I lean into something.
It's all good, man. All right, let's see what's going on here.
There we go. Thank you. Don't touch the thing. Okay. Don't lean into the machine. So transaction decline. So sometimes we'll get it. The easiest thing is if you try to exceed your limit, okay, it'll be stopped at the vendor. If your limit is $1,000 per transaction, you're trying to buy something that's $2,000, and it's going to stop you. Do not split that transaction, okay? We'll catch you. We'll see you, okay? And that's a violation. So anyway, you don't need to split it either. Just contact us and say, look, I'm trying to buy something for $2,000. I need a temporary increase. We'll get you set up for that temporary increase so you can get that transaction done. We can do it right on the fly, right when you're at the store, okay? We've been there, say, give it 5 minutes. We'll go in there, figure this out. That's the temporary increase. Sometimes it's a merchant category code that's set up to block a transaction that our template within US Bank would say, no, those are not applicable or appropriate transactions, so we're going to block them. But sometimes it's really just the merchant category code that's being used by the vendor that we don't have control over that would block something that we would normally say, yeah, that's totally appropriate. So we just have to go in. Any one of the three of us can go in, find out what the code is that's being blocked, release that code. Okay, so that's easy enough to do. Again, something on the fly, we can do that. Some things, it's registration, are usually the things that pop up most, because sometimes depending upon where the registration is, it's coming across like a charity donation, which is not acceptable. But we just look at it and say, no, we'll ask you, what is this for? And it's for registration. Fine, we'll just go in there. Sometimes it's a hotel, okay? They're facilitating the registration process for a conference. We'll look at it and say, no, that's okay. Conference registration fees are okay. Hotel accommodations are not okay on the Pro Card. Suspected fraud activity. Sometimes we'll get a bounce back and say, oh, this is suspected fraud. So we'll just check on it. And sometimes it'll block it and they'll want you to contact the vendor and go through your last transactions. If any of you have regular credit cards, you'll get this all the time, that sometimes there's suspicious activity. Well, US Bank will stop it and make sure that, hey, wait a minute, are these transactions the ones that you're trying to process? We already talked about merchant category code. Recon Buddy. Okay, so just to make sure, if you're away or if you're planning to be away, take the time first to set up and say, who's going to be my Recon Buddy in my department? And get them up through CFS, fill out the form so they can access and see the Pro Card module so they can do in the reconciliation when it's the appropriate time. Conflict of interest. Okay, new Pro Card users, again, you're getting this just to get out of the gate, to get started. We'll be sending a form to university personnel, get you set up for conflict of interest training because you are making purchasing decisions out there in the field. We want to make sure that you've gone through conflict of interest training so that you know what is appropriate, what is not appropriate. Don't go to your Uncle Dave's store and spend at the Pro Card just because it's Uncle Dave's store and right next door there's some place that's got better pricing. So that's a simple example. Other times we'll just have it, we'll just say, well, wait a minute, why is it that you're going to this particular place to purchase it? So those will come up. But you get the training in conflict of interest. There's a form that you fill out. Unfortunately, you're on the hook then for filling out that form every single year. It's almost like a tax form. but it's really simple. You fill out one time, and unless your particular circumstances change such that your Uncle Fred has now bought up the land right next to the university, usually you can just say, no, I don't have any conflicts here. All right. If you get gifts, okay, because somebody has approached you and say, oh yeah, I want you to do business with me. By the way, there's something in it for you on the side. Okay, the answer is no, thank you very much. But if you do receive those gifts, the conflict of interest training will tell you what limits of gifts you can receive up to, but you do have to report those. So again, you want to save yourself some hassle, don't accept the gifts, but you still have to fill out the report every single year of the Form 700. The online training is every 2 years. And when you leave service or when you give up your Pro card and say, I no longer want a Pro card, UP will also send you a form on the outgoing and say, okay, now that you've completed your Pro card usage, we need you to fill out one more time. And that's the last time you have to fill this out. Some of you have to fill this out just because of your regular job within the university. Doesn't matter whether you have a Pro card or not. You just have to fill the Form 700 conflict of interest out. Administrative systems management. Oh, they're the ones who decide, okay, they provide access to the Pro card module. And I think I just said this. Oh, the Pro card, the 700 form needs to be delivered to university personnel. They will release the gate, then contact Dave and say, it's okay to release this Pro card. We've already ordered it. It's already on its way, but we need you to, and it might be sitting there with Ava. We need you to make sure that you've got the conflict of interest requirements completed before Ava can release the Pro card to you. Procurement card handbook. There's a few things that have changed. Not a whole lot since the last rollout. October 2018. That's the one. If any of you are actually grabbing that and putting it on your desktop, make sure that you've got the October 2018 version. Otherwise, if you want to go to the guidelines in ProCard on our website, grab the most current one. Hazardous materials and precursors to hazardous materials is the newest element. How many of you are ordering hazardous materials? How many of you don't know if you're ordering hazardous materials? Okay. That's where the website, both the procurement website, but the ProCard guidelines are going to tell you, whoa, these things are hazardous materials. We have no merchant category code that identifies the hazardous materials. There's no account code that identifies hazardous materials. Those who are doing them probably have knowledge that what they're ordering is some kind of chemical, some kind of thing that says, oh, once used, that's why it's a precursor, but once used, it now becomes a hazardous material that has to be disposed of and stored correctly. The chemicals have to be labeled correctly. A whole bunch of guidelines are there. What we've got, though, is environmental health and safety. Okay, Amy Thomas. Does everybody know Amy Thomas? Okay. Amy Thomas is our new risk management person. She's our new environmental health and safety person. Okay. Art Evgen is no longer risk management. Amy Thomas. 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 Okay. She's also overseeing environmental health and safety. All right. And we still have the other two regular people that you would normally turn to, Ariane Tucker, Mitchell Reed in academic affairs. They're working under her now, but we'll be advancing that program and making sure everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing if they're ordering chemicals and storing chemicals. Most of those who are already doing it are aware of it. It's just something that we had to make sure, because we got slammed in the last audit, to say, wait, we were not addressing hazardous materials in the Pro card. Do we want to prevent anybody from using the Pro card for hazardous materials? We can't, because we don't have merchant category codes to block, and we can't tell what's there, what's not there. So we don't want to say, no, you can't use your Pro card, because most of these things, Fisher Scientific and stuff, they thrive on the use of the Pro card. Okay, so it's really, we put the onus on the Pro card user and that department to say, follow the guidelines for safe use and storage and disposal of hazardous materials and precursors to hazardous materials. Oh, and I wiped out the next slide. Electronic, okay, please update when we send out revisions. Code approving officials are responsible for compliance with the guidelines. Yes, make sure your approving officials have access to this as well. Sometimes we're finding out and it says, oh, okay, somebody slips up. Hopefully the approving official is going to catch it and say, oh, wait a minute, you weren't supposed to do this. Okay, but the fact is we're finding a lot of these things we're having to push back and alert and inform both the Pro card holder and the approving official. Okay, so it's not like we're trying to embarrass you, but we're using this as a learning opportunity for both of you to say, oh, by the way, this one got by. We we need you to do this. And usually it's just an ask for a pre-approval, whether it's from IT or sometimes it's for campus planning, design, and construction. Facilities management department. Sometimes it's pre-approval from some of them, depending upon the circumstances. Those are all in the guidelines. So we're just going to call you out if you've forgotten the guidelines or missed a part. Usage and compliance, no splitting borders, no prohibited items, conditional items, prior written authorizations. Okay, delivered on time. Yes, just make sure they're timely. The category codes, we already talked about that. No missing or uncounted. Make sure you've got all the receipts in there. Okay, if we see a pattern of, oh, missing receipts, missing receipts, missing receipts, then we know that, okay, you're not really managing your pro card. Okay, you're not keeping track of the receipts. Everybody should be just saying, okay, you go out there, receipt goes into an envelope, waiting for that reconciliation magical moment. We're not tax exempt. So be aware that when you're getting things, okay, they may say, the vendor may say, oh gosh, you're in California, you don't have to pay taxes. Oh, yes, we do. We have to pay a use tax. So it's either going to be upfront or it's going to be behind the scenes. So when you see this, your reconciliation report, Ava, and some helpers sometimes, depending upon the volume that we talk about, comb through each and every transaction on your reconciliation report to identify, is this something that we have to consider sales tax or use tax? And apply it then. So you may see and set aside and say, oh, I've done a whole lot of spending this month. I've gotten all the commodities, I've gotten all the direct accounts and the direct amounts accounted for. But then when you see the actuals, all of a sudden you see, whoa, where did that come from? You might see that it's, wow, it's like 9% higher than I expected. Well, wait, what happened? That's the sales tax and use tax being applied behind the scenes. So be aware that it's out there and know that you're going to be paying for that for your department, either upfront or behind the scenes. It's 9.25% for Seaside. Usually it's depending upon where that item is received. Most of the time we're receiving our stuff right here in Seaside. If you're across the border and technically in Marina, you're still receiving in Seaside. Okay, purchases made must still, okay, good. Reminders, these are just reminders. Okay, detailed, make sure the receipts make sense. Sometimes we'll look at and say, oh, sometimes you get two receipts and it's like one is detailed and the other is not. It's just the amount of the transaction. We need the detailed receipt so we can see what the items are. Because sometimes the reconciliation report doesn't have enough detail. We're asking you to put the detail on the reconciliation report. Sometimes we turn to the receipt to say, oh, here's what it is. Don't send the report to procurement if the receipt is missing or doesn't match the amount posted. We'll have to look at and figure that out and say, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? If there's a discrepancy between the two, that's going to hold up the processing of your reconciliation. Make sure the reports are signed by the cardholder approving official. It happens rarely, but just because the approving official is out doesn't mean you should just go ahead and send the pro card, because we need it to be reviewed by somebody. That's where you need your approving official backup. Catering form is always required for food expenses. Aviance, yes, you can use pro card for Aviance. Target, Safeway, if you're picking up food from these things. Costco, again, but we'll need the hospitality, we're calling it catering form, catering food expense approval form. We'll need that filled out with your reconciliation report. And are we doing it? Okay. Always enter the description, use the correct account code. You want to look at it and say, yes, it's defaulting to your office expenses most of the time. We want you to just, okay, that's good as long as it's an office expense. But if it's something else, we want you to change the account code. Don't just leave it as office expense. You really should reflect it, even if it means you have to request a budget transfer later on to get the money over there to not have a deficiency or deficit, then go ahead and do that. Please put receipts in the same order. It just helps us, okay? We're not going to reject it, but it really helps us go through there, and we don't knee jerk and think, oh, they have a missing receipt. No, it's somewhere buried deep underneath that. Submit the documentation to evidence prior written authorizations. Right. If we give you email approval and say, here's your written authorization, did I say, I haven't gotten the gift cards. Here's your written authorization, go ahead and include that in the reconciliation report. That's our safety net for audits. Okay. They're going to look at it and say, oh, here's your guidelines. Where's your prior written approval? Oh, here it is. It's right there in the reconciliation report, right next to the transaction. That's where it's most valuable for us. And that's how we withstand audits. We learned that the hard way. Computer and software, again, that's the same thing for purchase orders. You need IT approval, Henry or Chip, okay, to write off and say, if it's going to be connected to the network, This is the equipment that you can get. Cardholders approving official changes, right. Keep up with, help us, because we don't know. We know when somebody's leaving. University personnel tells us when somebody is leaving. They do not tell us when somebody gets a promotion. They don't tell us when somebody moves on and you have a different approving official. So please let us know. Don't just have that person start signing then, oh, you got to sign here because that's it. We want to go ahead and document that so we know that this is an ongoing change or a permanent change to our system, because we have to have a whole nother table that we show to say, oh, here's the Pro Card holder, here's the approving officials, here's the backup approving official. If those change, please let us know, because we don't have any other way of knowing unless you inform us. Fraudulent activity, okay, right. Just be safe. The same thing for your own personal card. Be safe. Where are you using it? How are you using it? Be on the lookout for fraudulent activity. Okay, you might, if you do have something going on, you might have to report it, contact US Bank and say, wait a minute, this is, I did not buy this. Okay, I need to contest this charge. It needs to be researched. Please put a hold on this. They'll do that and they'll say, okay, fine, we're not going to charge you for this. We're going to conduct a hold, but we need you to do the following kinds of things to research this. Other pitfalls, postage stamps. All right. It's possible, but yes, it's going to, please contact. Don't just go out and get postage stamps. Things that can automatically be, transmitted into money or used instead of, or used for personal reasons. We want you to control those things. Contact us first. There's just a process we're going to have to go through. You do postage stamps, we're going to treat it like it's, we're going to treat it like it's cash, and we're going to come out and say, how are you controlling these things? Crayola will tell you this. It's a hassle, but they're going to come out and, stamp by stamp by stamp. You have to account for each stamp that you use once you get a roll of stamps. So anyway, it's a headache. Contracts and agreements not signed by a university agent in advance. Again, if you're going to use a Pro Card for service, you need to check with us first. Unless we've already vetted it on the website, you'll see it there that says Pro Card may be used. Go with it. Missing insurance or indemnifications regarding services obtained. We want to make sure that we've got a decent service agreement in place before you move forward with a Pro Card transaction, just to say, boom, we pay for it. Sales use, not budgeted. It's just to prevent you from getting surprised at the end when we actually see that charge or land that charge on your account. Returns and credits documented. Still evolving. Hazardous material, we talked about that. So I'm going to skip this slide. Pro Card context. Okay, that's the three of us here. University personnel, that will be the conflict of interest part. It's still Melanie Chavez. We have a new person in University Corporation. It's no longer Allison Bagshee. She moved to academic scheduling. So now it's Cynthia Lynch. Okay, so if any of you, how many of you are a corporation that you, or also have a corporation Pro Card? Okay. This pocket is for your corporation Pro Card. This pocket is for your stateside Pro Card. Okay, Payment Works. All right, thank you for being patient with all that stuff. I'm going to do this. There's a video from what we're doing now is Payment Works. It's the new vendor onboarding. Okay. I do want to acknowledge Miguel Silva, who really did a lot of work to make this happen. I want to give credit to Steve Mackey for vision and financially sponsoring this thing. This is really going to speedline our process. No more STD 204 forms. Okay, so finally we can say we're getting rid of at least one STD. Okay, so you don't have to send anything out. We have an active link now. It is on the website, the procurement website. We'll also be sending out an email to you. Anyone with a single sign-on, okay, can be or is an initiator. So instead of grabbing the vendor data packet, sending out to the vendor, what you're going to do is to go into the link, access Payment Works, and just say, well, the video will tell you what you have to do, but it's really, really simple. And you don't even have to do as much as the video will tell you. You can enter the information in, send it, and wait for a confirmation. You will receive a confirmation back from Payment Works when we've gone through and the vendor is active in CFS. That's the time that you're able to do the purchase rec, or you're able to move forward with the transaction or the service agreement, because you'll get confirmation in an email, and it will include the vendor number. Okay, so you send it and forget about it. And just if you wanted to go through and say, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Okay, a day has passed. Where is it? Where is it? You can go into PaymentWorks and actually find out the status of it as it moves along through the process. So that part is really neat. Do you have to do that? No. This video is going to show you, yes, you can do that. You don't have to. You'll get an email confirmation with the vendor number. The vendor is doing all the information with the interacting. Okay. And once we go live sometime soon, early into the next fiscal year, actually, I've got it on here, but they will be able to check payment status as well. Right now, they'll be confirmed when they have gotten their stuff and they're approved as a vendor for CSUMB. They may reach out to you for payment status. They're likely to reach out to accounts payable for payment status. Once we go live into fully integrated with CFS, which is a system-wide effort right now, once we get to that, they will be able to check their payment status as well. What we're going to see right now, we're going manual because we really, really want to have this happen right now. Miguel is going to be behind the scenes doing the wizard behind the curtain stuff, interacting with PaymentWorks to get it into CFS. Okay, so he's still going to be busy doing that. It will take a little bit of time, but we're still talking about, we're looking to see the same kind of turnaround time that you're experiencing now between sending a VDR out and getting that vendor onboarded, but also then receiving confirmation of now you know, and you've got the vendor number. You can check this out. Okay, here, let's try and run the video.
In this video, we will provide a brief explanation on how to send invitations to prospective suppliers, as well as track the onboarding process. To begin, click Send Invitation at the bottom left of your screen. Here, you will be able to send an invitation to a supplier to register with your organization. Fill the required fields and click Send. Your organization may require other fields than those shown. You will see the invitation appear in the Onboardings view. To resend an invitation or cancel registration reminders, click here. The invitation will expand as shown here, and when you click Resend, you can edit the company name and/or email address to which the invitation will be resent. The supplier will receive an invitation that looks like the screen shown here. Your organization may have a customized version of this message. It is important to note that your supplier must click on the special link in the invitation, highlighted here, in order to successfully connect with your company. The supplier will be prompted to join PaymentWorks and create an account with basic information. After creating an account, the supplier will have to confirm their email address before starting the new vendor registration form. Once the account has been confirmed, your supplier will be able to complete the new vendor registration form. They will receive confirmation when their form has been submitted. Your finance department will review the form and input the supplier in their system. Now we will explain the statuses you will see in the Onboardings view. In the invitation column, Sent will appear as soon as you send the invitation. Once the supplier receives the invitation in their inbox, the status will change to Delivered. The status Opened means the supplier opened the email. And when it says Clicked, it means they have clicked the special link in the invitation. In the Account field, the status will change from No Account to Created once the supplier has created a secure PaymentWorks account. When the supplier verifies their email, the status will change to Confirmed. When the supplier completes the registration form, the value in the new vendor registration column will appear as submitted. The status Processed will appear as the finance department is reviewing the form and will show as complete when the supplier is approved and assigned a vendor number. I hope this video has been helpful. If you have any further questions, contact your PaymentWorks administrator.
Okay. Again, you can check the status. You don't have to. Okay. It'll alert you. I'm sure you all have plenty of other things to do. So, confirmation, vendor number, vendor can check the status. Not okay. Good. Not through you. And yes, the go live date today. Okay. So look back to the procurement site for the link. We're going to see what we can do to get it on the dashboard, but it's not likely to be able to work on the dashboard. That's the preliminary feedback we're getting. So just get the link. But again, once you've got it, you can save it as a favorite. You can just have it whenever you need to. Anyway, just real quick, any questions? Good, thank you. Nice, okay. All right. This is for new vendors. What we've got now is, yes, we've transferred over all the existing vendors. That is in PaymentWorks. So anybody that is approaching PaymentWorks, they'll match that against their taxpayer identification number and they say, oh, you're already in the system for CSUMB. Don't need to do anything else. We may blanket out to them in the near future. Once we got this going and we're comfortable with it, the next iteration is for us to go to ACH. And we may use that to reach out to vendors and say, oh, we want your bank account information. Because they don't reply to me when I just send an email. So we're hoping that through PaymentWorks, they're going to say, yeah, here's your secure line. Please put your routing number and your bank account information. We can do ACH. Anyway.
So, Art, you have a question in the chat. Does this apply to students as well?
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, okay. The question is, does this apply to students as well? We're treating this for any of our independent contractors. So students fall into two categories. One is they're on the student side and it's fine and they don't do this process. The other is if they are being treated as an independent contractor, DJ Mix and Spin, you're out there, okay? And we have a service agreement for you when you do this. It's a blanket service agreement. We have to establish you as a vendor. We already have you as a vendor in CFS now, but if any others like you out there, independent contractor, then we need to bring them in through PaymentWorks. Let me also take this opportunity to remind everybody, forgot to put it in here as content, independent contractors cannot be employees of CSU. Not even just CSUMB, they can't be employees of CSU anywhere unless they are faculty or coaches. That's the two exceptions. So a typical staff person cannot be hired as an independent contractor. An MPP cannot be hired as an independent contractor. So those are restrictions that we have. Students, however, can. Corporation employees can be hired as CSU independent contractors.
But I think they were asking for clarification in regards to reimbursement.
Okay, if it's reimbursement, no. No, if they're not providing services and we're just doing reimbursements, typically we're doing one-time vendor setups. We'll get a request from payroll or from student accounts and saying, we're trying to do this reimbursement to the student for an overpayment or a refund. We'll do a one-time vendor setup. We're keeping those internally. It's not through PaymentWorks. Yes, yes. PaymentWorks will take the international information. They'll take whatever visa, whatever documentation they'll have. They'll first ask the question, are you doing services in the United States or services in the country in which you reside? So there's levels of inquiries in PaymentWorks they're going to do to gather it up for us. They're still going to send it to us for full consideration, and we greenlight them or reach back and say we have to gather additional information because it's complicated depending upon the visa status that the person is here in the United States. No, no more preliminary assessment. Are my ears wiggling? My ears wiggling. No more preliminary assessment. That'll be done through PaymentWorks. The most is that we may, in procurement, we may reach out to you to say we need to get hold of this person and get some additional information. Okay, sorry, I need to run, but please, if you have any other questions, go ahead and forward them to me, or you can include Michael Phillips or Will Carlisle, any one of us in procurement, or Miguel Silva to ask a question, Ava Salas. And anyway, if you do have some questions, please do this and I'll shoot them out in content and the Business Ops forum. Thank you very much. Got to run.
Well, thanks, buddy. That's a snowball fight to get to. All right, so up next is Brenna. She's going to give us an update on the Procure to Pay project. There was something I was going to say. I don't remember what the hell it was. Oh, well. It's gone now. This speakers, what is up with this? It sounds like it's going to blow up. There we go. Thank you, Garen, for your technical help. All right, so we're going to hand off to Wonder Woman here.
Very good. Hello, everyone. Happy Halloween. All right. At the last BOF there was a term thrown out called procure to pay, a new initiative, a new project. This is kind of my outline. Basically, I wanted to give you a brief overview. I have to sound here, huh? What? Okay. No, this is not on. This is the computer mic. Anyways, I just kind of wanted to give you a brief overview on what this Procure to Pay initiative is. What is it and what does it mean to you? Why do you guys care? Essentially, the Procure to Pay project is looking at the entire process, starting with the identifying a need, identifying something that a service you need, a good you need, establishing, finding a vendor, going through the contracting process, purchasing that item, purchase order, all the way through getting that vendor paid. So it's the entire process of contracting through the purchasing and payment. What we are going to be doing is looking step by step through this entire process, looking at the process, analyzing how well it's working, if there's any improvements that can be made, and if there's any efficiencies that can be gained. So what does that mean to you guys? We are going to need your help, and we're going to be asking questions of you throughout this process of what's working, what's not working, how can we improve various items within these functions. Trying to think. So you will be hearing from us as we're going through the various functions, sub-functions, identifying what we want to tackle first, identifying needed improvements. So be on the lookout for any questions or emails. This is kind of a snapshot. It's a lot of information. It'll be better if you look at it on your screen at your desk, but we're really identifying the big functions and breaking it into the very smaller functions, tasks, who owns this, so that we can really pick apart this entire process. We're going to be just getting down to the nitty-gritty stuff. So this is just the beginning of us trying to kind of identify the various steps involved in this function. I think that's basically what I wanted to kind of give you an overview. Yeah, question?
Is it necessary when we purchase orders, get the definition signed by the appropriate fiscal authority?
Okay.
And then when we later receive the goods and begin an invoice for payment, why is it necessary for that same person to sign the invoice since they have already authorized the maximum amount of the purchase?
I will repeat. Yeah. So the question is regarding purchase orders. When the departments are submitting purchase requisitions, a fiscal authority is required to sign off on that and establish the parameters for that purchase and the amount for that purchase. Question is, why then, once we get that good or service, does that fiscal authority then need to sign again, requesting the payment? And that is an exact, perfect example of something that we're absolutely going to be looking into. Is this really necessary? Is this a good use of our time? What are we gaining through adding that signature on the payment request that has already been approved via a purchase order? So that is something that has absolutely been identified as something that we already want to look into. So yeah, we'll be tackling that. Any other questions? I think this is my only slide. Questica budget. All right, I'm off the hook.
You're on. So I do want to touch on this just a little bit. So when you think about the strategic plan and what's coming out with that, and continuous process improvement is a component of the strategic plan. This is how we're looking at this. So Payment Works is part of the procure to pay life cycle. And right, so when when you really analyze it and break it down, you'll see that Payment Works is part of it, but also is ACH. And we're tackling both of those at the same time. And so we're tackling the pre-contracting work, and we're also on the payment side. So we're making dual improvements within this life cycle. So this is why Brenna has kind of taken this on as the project manager for the whole life cycle. We started Payment Works before we started the Procure to Pay. Procure to Pay kind of birthed out of it. But so we're really going to start picking this apart and looking for process improvement, because it impacts everybody across the whole system, across the whole university. So we're pretty stoked about that. And I guess up next are you two young ladies, right? So, okay. You want me to flip the slide forward for you? Yes.
Hello, this is Yolanda Angelin, Director of Budget and Planning, and Susan McFarland, Director of Administrative Systems Management. So we're here to give you a quick update on Questica budget. So what we've been working on is validating accounting data and budget data for 16-17, 17-18, and 18-19. We're just about done with that. We're just about done with that. We have a little bit more validating to do.
We're done.
Are we done?
We're done. As
Okay.
of yesterday.
We're done then. Okay. Woohoo.
Yeah.
We're done. Okay. I missed that. I was on my other job yesterday.
We are done with that.
Okay. So now we're also in the middle of validating positions. So the various divisions have been sending in, well, we took a dump out of CMS and we sent positions out to every division. And we're trying to see which positions we can inactivate so that we get a cleaner load set to put into Questica. So we're almost done with that. We'll be done with that before we meet again. And then we also have 4 process work groups that we put together based on the survey outcomes of the last off, where you said the needs were. So we're listening to you. So we have 4 work groups put together. They are base budget and one.
For the website.
I'll let you do that.
Okay. Can we click on here?
Let's go there. Okay, so Susan's put together a project website for Questica budget. And on here, you'll see the work groups we put together, the purpose of the work groups, the major milestones we've kind of are hitting. You can see if we're in progress or if we've completed the task. The various work groups, the reporting work group, I'm the lead for that one. You can see the members of that group. Lori Dixon's also helping me with that. We have the one-time and base budget group. That's Lori leading it and me helping her with that. So then position management, Bob Cabillas and Ralph Surtek, they're co-leading that together. And then the communications group. And let me also say that we're still open. Should you want to volunteer for any of these groups, just send me an email and let me know what group you're interested in, and we can still put you in as we move forward. Our first meeting is set up for November 12th. We have a couple groups meeting in the morning, a couple groups meeting in the afternoon. Our charge here, as the webpage kind of tells you, is we're going to look at our current processes, see where we can make improvements, make the process more efficient, more effective, and then we're going to roll forward with that to see what functionality that's existing in Questica to help us meet our needs, the needs of the user. And then also we're going to move forward with that information to help produce the training documents and training that we provide in the future. Am I missing anything? I think we're, so we'll have an update from the work groups when BOF meets again November 13th, because we'll be meeting the day before. So, and I think that's it. Anything else to add? Okay. All right, we're good. So let's just get questions.
Oh, were there any questions online? No? Okay, very good. All right, we're going to get through the rest of this here. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. See if we missed anything here. No. Okay, I give a quick update on our Director of Accounting Search. Open forums are next week. Joel and Debbie are here on the 6th and the 7th. Please make every effort to attend. I really want to hear from you guys. Neither one of these candidates are from the CSU. So it's really important that we hear, and if you guys have any concerns, I need to know about it as the hiring manager. Brian and I have been working really, really hard to make sure we've got a good pool. Both of these guys are really, really well qualified. We're totally in a good place with the quality of people that another source was able to get into our applicant pool. So it's been a really nice exercise to go through to really get the quality of these guys. But I definitely want to please participate. Ask them hard questions. Don't be afraid. Because if you don't ask, we can't tell. And I need to know from your guys' perspective, especially from the campus people. Like, what your pros and cons are.
You seem to be getting around fine.
Otherwise, I'm going to be making a decision based on partial information. So the more information we get, the better the decision will be, the better outcome will be. So thank you for that in advance. And with that, Kim and I, do you want me to just do this? Okay. So we have been kind of revamping our website. And part of the things that we've done is that what I noticed when I got here is the website is set up around our organization function, and it's impossible to find anything. So what we did was we kind of revamped it. You'll see our header based on the information. Now, what we did was we got with the web services team. They told us what our Google Analytics are, the number 1, number 2 things, and you'll see the number 1, number 2, number 3 things that are searched for on our site. And so you just click here, and it brings you straight over to the travel page. We have not changed these pages yet, but that's how it's navigating now. So training, we've got our 2 sites there, forms. So we have, like, it's just a start, but what we've done is we've just organized the menus. We've organized the menus so that you can find the forms for the various pages rather than searching through the accounting page to try and find the right accounting forms to get, like, we haven't changed anything in the back end though. All those pages are all the same. So you're familiar with those pages, but the navigation to them has been simplified. You'll see projects, so you will see we have budget here. This goes to that project page that they just showed. We will be adding the procure to pay page in here as well, so you'll always know where to find our budgets. This jumps to the traditional websites, and then this will always get you home. On the home page, the other thing that we've added is we've given you some updates here. In case you missed the Questica demo, it's on here now. Business ops forums. So we're trying to make this left-hand side the important information. We'll have Art talked a little bit about the Payment Works training that was just shown. It will show up here. We'll publish that this afternoon. The other key thing we did was on the right-hand side over there, you'll see the contacts. So every office now has a phone number and an email address for us, because what was happening was students are calling Kim 20 times a day trying to get a hold of student accounts. So we're making it easy to contact, we're making it easy to navigate. If you guys could take some time and take a look at this and just shoot Kim an email with what you'd like to see, what are the things we can do, that would be very helpful. So we're really trying to make this surrounded so you guys can actually function and make things better for you guys. Don't forget, Bill Musselman's big day's coming up. You know, we're 6 weeks out. I don't think Bill's here today. Yeah, he's abandoning me because he doesn't want me picking on him. Anyway, we're totally stoked for this. I'm really happy for Bill. He's going to be greatly missed though. And then at the next BOF, Amy Thomas is going to come and present her new department, which is not in finance anymore. She reports to Kevin. So Art is not risk. Steve is not risk. Amy is risk. So that's like, you know, this is a good thing. So she's going to come introduce the department at the next BOF. And thank you very much, everybody. Any questions, any comments, any concerns, anything you guys want to talk about real quick? No? Yeah, I know. Kim crushed it, right? Did you get a picture? Don't get up yet. Don't get up yet. Did you get a picture? We got a picture. Okay, great. Payment Works asked for a picture